Welcome to this edition of When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine, a discussion of sustainable living and what that means to you and me. Coming to you from Studio B, WOUB Radio in Athens, Ohio. I am Jay Warmke.
I'm Annie Warmke.
You're Annie
Good
Warmke
morning,
for sure.
Good evening.
And today we're going to be talking about this recent campaign about no solar on Prime Farmland. You may have seen the signs, or my alternate title is A Man's Home is His Castle Unless You're Doing Something I Don't Like. So that's pretty much
that's
it.
True if you're not in the 1% anyway.
Right. So what prompted this discussion is I do a lot of solar assessments, and as I was driving around northern Ohio, I started seeing a lot of these signs that basically they're all the same. They show no solar on Prime Farmland, and I was thinking about this because they're all the same, and I thought somebody's paying for these things. This is an organized effort. It's not like somebody got up today and goes, I don't like solar.
But they're
on
all over the state because
Right.
Where I buy my feed from direct from the farmer, he has a bunch of them going along the front of his property line.
Sure. Well, so I started looking into it a little bit to see who's behind this, what's behind it, what they're claiming, why they don't like it. Well, we always end up at the Koch brothers. Well, Monsanto maybe.
DuPont.
Who knows? Those I don't know. But so I do have some sympathy for it. At the very surface level, because Prime Farmland, nice farmland, should not be the first choice for solar.
It should be to make a development.
Oh, I know. I'm not fine with that either. But I'm just saying that my sympathy extends to where if we have a choice of where to put them, I would rather put them on already damaged property. If it's a coal mine,
reusing sites.
Yeah. So what these properties are classified as is there's brownfields. Now, brownfields are sites that have been disturbed or developed or polluted in some way where there is toxic remnants, like a coal mine, like a power plant, or an industrial facility, a chemical facility. And usually there's a lot of EPA oversight when you want to go and develop this, because you might find that you're disturbing, you go plow things up and you're disturbing asbestos or something that might come into the atmosphere. And so these brownfields, because there is an added layer of cost, in the Inflation Reduction Act, they did put a 10% bump. Basically, you get an additional 10% tax credit if you develop a brownfield. My guess is, though, that doesn't cover the added cost of developing a brownfield. So I think we need to somehow incentivize more, whether it's carrot or whether it's stick, I don't know. But to say, all right, these sites really should be the first ones developed.
Well, there are some incentives. I know Reimagine Appalachia is just got a $10 million grant from I believe it was the Appalachian Regional Commission, and they're working with a couple of other groups to and have been working on this for a long time, several years now, to go in and provide incentives and get communities to work together for these fossil fuel sites to be, repurposed, reevaluated, reimagined in some form or fashion.
Okay, well, that's all good. I don't want to spend too much time on that particular aspect of it. There are also gray fields. Gray fields are, you can think of them like shopping malls, big facilities, basically concrete. A lot of
brown
concrete
fields too.
But they're not necessarily EPA type.
And
level.
They also were built almost always on
Prime Farmland
yes. Because it's flat.
The old Walmarts that they go in and they develop, and then 3 years later they close them down and build one across the street. So that's it. And then there's green fields. Now, green fields are basically undisturbed land that the unicorns dance through in fairy dust and sparkly. Now, the farmers will all say their farmland is greenfield, but it's not. It's
No.
not considered greenfield because it's completely industrialized. It's full of
Yeah,
pesticides. It's
it's
full
a
of
brownfield for
it.
sure.
I don't know if they quite get there, but they're definitely not
Well,
pristine,
you stand
undeveloped
there while
land.
they're spraying and you say it doesn't impact your health. I mean,
Oh yeah,
Monsanto's been sued and lost around non-Hodgkin's lymphoma from
sure.
thready Roundup spray, which is what they
All right.
primarily spray.
Okay, I can see I'm going to have to keep redirecting you
Okay,
back to
but
solar.
here's the thing
So,
that I want to say
uh-huh.
that when I read about these different issues around, don't make prime farmland be a solar field, I have to say to myself, this is such narrow thinking because
Sure.
that farmer needs money or he wouldn't be or she wouldn't be uh, agreeing to some kind of a lease payment. But on the other hand, the reason it's so narrow and short sighted is that land is still available.
Sure. Okay.
It
Well,
just
don't
got a
don't get
shutter.
ahead. Don't get ahead of me on
Oh,
this.
okay.
All right. So let me back up a little bit here and say, all right, who's behind this? So I started doing a little bit of research, as much research
The
as I
big
ever
boys
do.
are coming to
Yeah,
town.
and a lot of this is coming from a group called Citizens for Responsible
Oh,
Solar.
always,
Yeah,
always.
Citizens for Responsible Solar. So, who is Citizens for Responsible Solar? Turns out it's a Virginia organization, but when I say Virginia, it's
You
really
mean based?
Washington
Oh, yeah.
D.C.
Uh-huh.
and it's headed up by a woman. Her
Oh,
last
I'm
name
sad about that.
is Ralston. I don't remember her first name, but
Like
she,
Ralston Purina
yeah,
Company.
Ralston, but that's not it. But she was the assistant to Karl Rove in the Bush
Oh, so she's a
administration.
lovely
She
soul.
was also the assistant
A caring, lovely
to a
soul.
fella named Abramoff, Jack
Oh, and
Abramoff.
she's also willing
Yeah.
to overlook shyster and
Well,
fraud
well,
and
she had to resign from the White House because all of the people she worked for were basically under indictment. Abramoff ended up going to prison for
yes,
scamming Native
didn't he
American
die there?
tribes.
I
No,
think
no,
he,
no. He
oh, he's
he
back.
he got out after 4 years. He was scamming Native American tribes when they were applying for casino permits, and he was raking off several $1,000,000. And so he had a road to Damascus kind of conversion when he was in prison. Came out a reformed man,
A
born again,
Christian.
whatever,
Oh,
and then went right back into scamming people about Bitcoin. So he's back in prison, or at least he was. I don't know if he still is. Of course, this was
I
all
thought
of.
he died in prison.
I don't know. I don't want to say that he did. Um, so this organization is behind it. Now, when you start trying to trace back a lot of their funding, it's kind of interesting because well, like all these organizations, it's very opaque. They don't
But
really.
it's not a nonprofit either, is it? It's a
I
company.
don't know if it's a nonprofit or not, but they do. A lot of the people involved are also in positions of authority with the group. Have you heard of ALEC, the American
Yeah.
Legislative? They
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of these. It's a Republican
Lobbyists.
type
Mm-hmm.
organization. Then there's an organization tied to the Koch brothers. So they're funneling a lot of money. So fossil fuel interest is they're an organization tied to the Peabody coal mining company.
Oh, goody.
So they're again more fossil fuels coming in. And then the ones that actually have to disclose their contributions because they are government bodies or nonprofits. U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They're
Well,
the
they're if it's not good for small farmers,
well,
they're going to be there.
that was part of the old Newt Gingrich contract for
Mm-hmm.
America, very tied in with the Republic. The Republican Governors Association gave them $100,000 for this. The Republican Mayors Group,
So they're really more like
it's the
one of
Republican
those.
Party.
Well, it's really more one of those PACs where they raise money and then give it to
I
other people in
I
government.
guess the thing that surprised me, it didn't surprise me that fossil fuels were involved with this. It surprised me that it was very much a Republican Party thing. They've decided clearly this is one of those culture war kind of
Yeah, we can
things.
rally. We can rally the
Yeah.
farmers who tend to be conservative around something, which is really it's
for their benefit.
Yes, it's
So,
and it's saying you don't want that money, don't take that money.
right.
We're over here. We know what's best for you, but they don't vote for what's best. They've never even passed a farm bill this year.
So do you support it or not?
Well, I don't. I do not.
All
I do
right.
not support.
Okay, so
Wait,
I'm
you asked me a question. I do not support the narrow thinking that's
Right.
in this because I do believe that we can protect farmland by doing things like this, where
Sure.
we reinvent how we grow food.
Okay, so I guess the reason I bring up all of these contributors and people who are involved in this organized program, because it clearly is an organized thing, is just because it surprised me that it was really so partisan. I assumed it would be
Solar is very partisan,
but it shouldn't be, and it hasn't been in the
well,
past.
so food shouldn't be partisan, but
Yeah,
it is.
but-
Poor people shouldn't be partisan.
Okay,
but it
so
is.
so what's the argument that they're making? All right, that's not a question.
Not enough
That's
money
a
for fossil
that's
fuel
a setup.
industry.
Okay, that's so what I want you to
Or bankrupt the farmers.
I don't want you to shoot down every one of these arguments as I say them.
Okay, I'll try not to, but I can't help it. It's like you're giving me one-liners
All right.
to give you zingers.
Okay, I may have to put a mental straitjacket on you here. I just want to say, what is their argument? You know, because clearly they've got to have an argument.
The Republican.
Well, the group, the Citizens for
corporate-
Responsible Solar.
So
they've got a
represent
website.
corporate America.
They've got a website,
Yeah,
and
they
no,
do.
they don't claim to represent corporate America,
Well, they
although
don't
we
have
know
to.
they
That's
are.
who funds them.
But okay, so the first thing they say is that solar.
I have one other question. Are there
Okay,
any
I didn't even
farmer-
get to number
Are
one.
there any farmer groups that support this?
I don't. I have no idea.
Apparently
I doubt
not.
it. I doubt
Yeah,
it.
I
Are
do
there
too.
any actual farmer groups?
Oh, yes, there are.
Okay, so they say that solar has a negative impact for the ecosystem and it's bad for the environment. Okay. Oh, she's trying to talk.
I'm not going to say a word.
So basically,
we have many podcasts that answer that.
Basically, their position is we, the farmers, are the environmental stewards of the land, and solar is harming this agrarian lifestyle that we love. Okay, that's argument number one. Okay, argument number two is this is all a plot by big tech and to get government subsidies to try and push forward their high-tech agenda on us. So
what does high tech have to do with generating electricity with the sun?
What it's doing is saying there is the other guy who you are to hate.
That's us the only versus them.
Yeah, that's the only purpose of that. They're basically saying they're taking your tax
the rich
dollars.
boys, and they're making all the money,
right?
And so you should be against us.
And probably Bill Gates is putting chips in your cows through solar. So, okay, so I'm now doing what I warned you not to do.
No, I'm just going, wait a minute.
Okay, so argument number three is solar panels produce huge amounts of toxic waste. Okay.
Wait.
I'm going to address these in a minute, but this is their argument, and I must say this argument is very persuasive with people. So already they've told you it's destroying our landscape. It's being manipulated by high-tech people so they can get your tax money, and it's polluting your land, and it's polluting the area.
But the people that live around those places know that it's the farmer.
Don't
and
go there.
Monsanto's products and DuPont's products.
They don't know that.
Yes,
they don't believe it,
but they don't care.
No, the farmers don't believe that their practices are.
They
polluting
say
the
it doesn't really hurt people.
Okay, I'm going to stop right here, and no, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to let everybody know.
No, you're not. You're not just getting started.
I'm going to let you know that you're listening to When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine with Jay and the ever vocal Annie Warmke. Coming to you from Studio B, WOUB Radio in Athens, reminding you it is indeed the end of the world as we know it.
Oh, And thank God.
Thank God. Okay, so
Well,
I
I'm
was
waiting on this part to be the end of the world, but not yet.
okay. So we're talking about the campaign that's like no solar on Prime Farmland, which you may or may not be aware of. If you live in the Midwest, you're probably seeing signs, wondering where they're coming from, why
We
they're
have to leave
happening.
the city to
Um,
see it.
yeah, well, ideally. So anyway, so argument number 4: solar's unreliable. Okay, bad idea. Okay, so already we've said it's destroying our country way of life. It's being organized by high tech to take your tax dollars. It's toxic and polluting, and it doesn't even work. So that's argument number 4.
Boy, there's a lot of people making mistakes then, aren't there?
And argument number 5
I
is
can't
one of
wait.
these saying, and the reason they're saying we have to do this is because of climate change, and this
That doesn't
produces
make-
so much CO2 that you just wouldn't believe it.
Well, they
So
don't believe in climate change, first of all,
it
and they
doesn't
probably
matter.
don't even know what CO2 is except the farts from their cows.
Yeah. So okay. So why is this suddenly a resonating issue? And it really is because
Just stop
there's a lot more
solar.
solar. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
if
they
it
don't
wasn't
want it.
happening, if it wasn't legitimately happening,
Mhm.
then nobody would care. But Ohio, since that's where we're sort of located, is a prime example that as of January 1st of this year, 2023, there were only about 450 megawatt hours of utility scale solar. So to give you a sense of that, 1 megawatt hour requires 6 to 8 acres. So we're really only talking about a few thousand acres of land that is at the moment dedicated to solar. But there's 6,000 megawatt of solar that's been approved. So already then you just take 6,000 times 8, whatever, my math is not going to be
6 times 8 is 40.
okay, so about 500,000 acres by the time you get there, I think, if I didn't do the zero wrong. So no, 50,000 acres. Yeah, so that's a lot of land. Whether it's 500,000 or 50,000, still a lot of land. So, and this is just the beginning, because nationwide, about 26% of all electricity is generated through renewable energy. Ohio only has about 4%. So we've got a lot of catch up. So there's going to be a lot of land. And so people are sort of lining up and saying this is going to be a bigger and bigger thing.
So here's my caveat. So it's all fine and good and not every project is being approved, because we see in the Farm and Dairy Journal that they love to report who's getting approval and who isn't getting approval. And so there are projects that are not going forward. I don't know if they have to comply differently to pass the, get your $200 if you pass go. But here's my complaint: is this is just willy-nilly happening. There's no concession for how do we keep this land productive. And I do know that farming has to transition from thousands of acres by one farm to splitting up how we raise food and feed people. We have to change that. But what I'm getting at is it's like a black and white issue. Oh, we're going to make this prime land into solar farms.
Right.
So therefore it cannot be farmland anymore. And that's baloney.
Okay. Well,
nobody's being held accountable for how that happens.
Let's not divert ourselves to there, because that's a whole different world of the fact that there is no universal planning structure about anything. But
no, that's why
let me try and knock down their arguments at the moment. One by one. That solar is disrupting their pristine agrarian lifestyle.
Have you ever driven down a country road and seen the incredible? It's like junkyards in a lot of these places.
Right. It is already the American way of farming is an industrial process.
Right. Well, and the people who run these mega farms are factory workers, basically, just doing what they're told. It's terrible. That picture that they have at the grocery store with the farmer on the little red tractor with his dog following him. That does not
Right.
exist in the corporate world where your food comes from.
Sure. And so we say, okay, then the other argument as part of that is, okay, when you take farmland out of production, you're hurting our farming, our food infrastructure. And we could say, first off, why do you care if your competitor goes out of business? Shouldn't that make your product that much more expensive? So that's a weird argument to be making, that I don't want my competition to go away. So if you don't want solar on your farm, you have every right to say, I don't want solar on my farm.
Right.
But you don't have the right to say, I don't want solar on my neighbor's farm. So that's
Right.
the strange thing.
Well, the problem, just let me get back to the good old
Problem.
boys, which is what we're talking about, is that making a living at farming is very complicated. And I don't mean so much of the business person, because farmers don't tend to be business people, in my experience. But the problem is that it's very complicated. So if you
Sure.
come along and you say, I'm the lease guy, and I want to negotiate a lease with you, that person is probably not making a living. They make money, like they used to
Sure.
tell me, the men farmers that I used to have to interact with. Okay, so we make 52,000, but it costs us 56 to make that 52.
Sure.
And so the way they end up a lot of times making money is on loss. So through their insurance.
Sure, their insurance and also their subsidies and all
Right.
of that. Well, it is very
wait a minute.
attractive. Okay,
Wait.
but let me get to
All
the
right.
economic
Okay.
issue, because it is very
That's what I was
attractive
going for.
that solar leasing on average goes somewhere between $400 and $2,000 an acre. So if you just say about $1,000 an
For
acre,
a long term.
20 years.
Yeah, you're going to count on that for 20 years.
And
Most
it's
farmers
every
are
year.
dead by then, because most
Sure.
farmers are in their 50s.
And this is $1,000 an acre compared to, in a good year, about 500 an acre for corn or wheat or soybeans. So you're making twice as much money doing nothing.
No, you're making more, because you
Twice
have
as
to
much.
plant. You have to plant that acreage and harvest that
I know,
acreage.
but
whereas
that's what
the
I
other
just
thing,
said. You're not
just
doing
sitting
anything.
there.
Yeah. So you're making twice as much. So it's very attractive to the farmer for sure. I think the people who are putting up the signs are mad because no one's asked them, but
I don't
it's
think
like,
so. I think the people putting up the signs have no thought about how
Yeah,
this is actually.
they're just angry.
They're being
They're
manipulated,
angry.
and this is a way for them to express
Okay.
their frustration.
Another thing about saying that it puts the food in peril. Well, when I was looking at this, about 45% of all of the corn grown in America is grown, to make ethanol. It's not food. It's not food. It's not for animals. It's not for people. It is a energy crop. And so solar on your farm takes up 1/3 the amount of land for the same energy production as planting corn. So to argue that you're taking food out of people's mouths is silly, because actually you're putting 2/3 of the land back in production that could be used for food. So it's a spurious argument. It's
Well,
just
it would
not
be interesting
legitimate.
to see also, because we export a huge amount.
Well, but that's
of
food for people and our.
I don't care.
Animals.
It's not for the people in this country, and they would be arguing against that as well.
All right. So big tech subsidized. Well, okay. What can you say? Solar is already the cheapest form of energy without subsidies, and fossil fuels are subsidized to the hilt. So that's just trying to create an enemy, trying to create the other.
Big tech solar farms, have they taken over farmland?
No, but they're buying the energy. A lot of the Amazons and Microsoft and those kind of people are buying the energy from these farms. So it's an easy target. Large amounts of toxic waste. This is kind of weird. First off, what they do on their website is they cite an article on this Citizens for Responsible Solar. They cite an article that was put out by one of the solar groups saying that in the year 2050, we might experience a certain amount of problems with disposing of old solar panels. And the article really was talking about, here's a bunch of opportunities for recycling, because there's really, most of the solar panels are made out of glass. aluminum, silver. All of these things can be recycled. They're not yet into that stream because there aren't that many of them really at the moment. But this is an
They're also
opportunity.
25 years or more product.
Yeah, and it's in the future, and they're
Yeah.
and they literally say that it will produce 2 to 3 times as much waste as plastics by the year 2050, which when you look at it, it's silly
I was
because
going to say, where's the data? Where's the
there
science
is none.
data?
It's just made up. It's just
Yeah.
absolutely, this one is just a bold-faced lie. And how do you argue against somebody who's just willing to
Also, how
say,
do we weigh that against the pollution
plus
that's
solar
happening all those
panels?
years that kills all these things
Yeah.
and kills people?
You could just as easily say solar panels will pull the moon down and it will hit the planet. You can just
Oh,
throw
that might
something
be
out there.
interesting.
Oh, now I've started something. So the argument that solar is unreliable, well, there's some argument to that, but that's irrelevant, because it is producing when it's producing, and that's how they're harvesting it. Doesn't
But
mean
that's
we
the
don't
whole
need
thing
other
of having
sources.
several sources to pick up the slack.
Mhm.
And some countries like Germany have done that very efficiently. In fact, they have given people incentives to have solar instead of fighting it all the time.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And their last argument is that the production of solar panels, the putting in of solar fields, do release CO2 into the environment. There's the use of concrete, there's the creation of the panels, and you can go, yeah, that's all true. Compared to what?
They're cows
Compared
that
to,
fart, and that's one of the largest
but
contributors.
but if you want energy, it's coming from somewhere.
Well, that's right.
And so solar is a lot less CO2 generating than all of the alternatives, pretty much, with the exception maybe of wind and hydro.
Well, so what does this woman who heads this, what is her long-term game plan? Because it seems like the goal is to rebel rouse farmers into saying we're against solar.
It's creating another hook, another culture war that you can simply now mobilize within the Republican Party, a opportunity for discord.
Or to support fossil fuel, wouldn't that be more?
It's part of it. That's who's paying for it. It's all sort of mixed together, but it is just another political culture war thing, and that's all. And this one is kind of it on the face of it. If you really look into it, it's pretty silly.
It's
the
like
arguments are pretty silly.
smacking the mice around, and the mice are the farmers.
But there doesn't have to be a legitimate reason when you start doing this. And unfortunately,
follow the money.
I think the people who are putting up the signs, they may be sincere in their feeling, but I think they're just being manipulated by folks who that's what their job is, to manipulate people into taking silly action.
Well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Okay, well, it's not going to be paved with solar panels, because that's a dumb idea. Anyway, I don't know where I went with that.
No,
anyway,
think about it. I know we're out of time, but just think about it. They have good intentions, but it's not okay.
Right, and they're going against their own self-interest and their own political beliefs.
Yes,
really,
that's right. Exactly.
Okay, well, you have been listening to When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine with Jay and Annie Warmke, coming to you from Studio B, WOUB Radio in Athens, Ohio. We want to thank our, always glowing, ever producing
Mr.
producer,
Rich. Yes.
Adam Rich. And we want to thank you for spending just a little bit of time with us. And as your grandmother hopefully told you, the secret to a happy and sustainable life is
play nice with others, clean up your own mess, and eat your vegetables.
All right. Till next time. Bye-bye.